Hey, welcome back to the next section on strengths. This is a personal favorite of mine. This week, we're going to let go of worrying about our weaknesses and focus on building our strengths. We're going to learn about moderation and willpower and achieving balance. There's plenty of information in this video that are going to support you in your journal topics and prepare you for this week's coaching. So enjoy. The definition of a strength, according to the Center for Applied Positive Psychology, is a pre-existing pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior that we would consider to feel authentic, energizing, and which leads to our best performance. What it means by authentic is that the strength feels like the real you. There are qualities that come naturally to you that you enjoy using and that's often related to your life purpose. When it's said that the strength is energizing, it means that when you're using your strength, there's a sense of aliveness and excitement. You might notice it in yourself or in others when they're using their strengths are more communicative, animated, and enthusiastic. Playing to your strengths enhances performance because you're going at your own flow rather than struggling upriver against the currents of your natural capacities. And finally, they enhance your well-being because you're doing what you naturally do best. Okay, so where do strengths come from? Well, according to Robert Biswas-Diener, strengths can be looked at as a product of evolution. That means that certain qualities, those that are useful for group or individual functioning, such as leadership, creativity, and forgiveness, may actually have biological roots as well as be handed down to us through socialization. Essentially, we each possess innate capacities, or things that come naturally to us, and we have likely continued to develop these because they came easier than other things, and we likely got praised for them. Okay, you're going to have plenty of opportunity to journal and coach around strengths this week, but first let's make a few distinctions. According to CAP, Center for Applied Positive Psychology, a realized strength is something that you're good at, it gives you energy, and you're able to use this strength often in your everyday life or profession. An unrealized strength is one that you're not currently using. It still gives you energy, you're still good at it. But this is probably the area of the greatest potential for growth. A learned behavior is something that you're good at and you do it often, but it doesn't give you any energy. For example, maybe you've gotten really good at editing papers. Your colleagues acknowledge you for the skill, but the task you find to be tedious and boring. That's a learned behavior. A weakness is, of course, something that we're not good at, but it also drains our energy to have to do, and we're unfortunately asked to do it often in our life. When asked what it would take to become our best selves, most people will go straight for trying to fix a weakness. But positive psychology suggests a radically different approach. When a report card comes with 5 A's and a D, what do you notice first? The D. It's because we're conditioned through evolution to focus on and weigh more heavily the negative over the positive. Researchers refer to this as the negativity bias, and it's a protective mechanism that actually served us long ago because ignoring a potential carrot or a reward would result in maybe missing a meal at worst, whereas ignoring a stick, a potential threat, would result in death. The same process explains the reason we have a tendency to pay a lot closer attention to our weaknesses than our strengths. However, overcoming this tendency is an important factor for living in optimal health. When it comes to our weakness, it's good to have an awareness of what they are, not necessarily so we can fix them, but so we can minimize how often we have to use them in our life. This is not to imply that we can't invest some effort in enhancing weakness if it really holds you back, but you'll get way more bang for the buck when you focus on using your strengths instead. Delegating or partnering with others whose strengths balance out your weakness are both good examples of how to work with the weakness. You'll have lots of opportunity to go deeper into this in your journaling and your coaching. It's your unrealized strengths that are your greatest area for potential energy, so we want to create more opportunities to use them whenever possible. Remember, these are the things you're good at and that give you energy, but you're not currently using very often. The first step to develop your unrealized strengths is to become aware of what they are. This can be done by several methods, including self-evaluation, taking an online assessment, or interviewing someone who knows you very, very well. The next step is to explore your strength. You'll start intentionally becoming more aware of when and where you're using them, and take note of the impact they have both on your energy and of the others around you. Then you'll start reflecting on how you've used your strengths in the past and how they've shaped the life you currently live. Finally, you want to start intentionally applying your strengths to your work, to your relationships, and to your goals. 3 steps: aware, explore, apply. Another powerful way to use strengths to overcome our negativity bias is to focus not on your own, but on the strengths of others. Strength spotting is a shift in perspective or an intention to look for what's working in someone rather than what's annoying or what's broken. According to strength researcher Alex Lindley, when we're strength spotting, we attempt to name or label what it is in that person that shines. This can be done in conversation with someone you know, or it can be done while observing the way people interact and, say, the line at coffee shops. It requires us to take a deep and non-judgmental look at the people around us and ask the question of ourselves, what does that person do well? Test it out and see what happens when you hold people in what humanist psychologist Carl Rogers calls unconditional positive regard, and choose to see them for their strengths rather than judge them for their weakness. Feel how you easily build empathy, compassion, and rapport. This game of strength spotting does require a degree of prior strengths vocabulary, or at least it takes some creative label making. You'll find in the workbook or on the group file a link for the list of 60 strengths to start with. There are 2 strengths that we're going to give extra attention to this section: moderation and willpower, as these can be great assets when making healthy lifestyle change. Through practice, these strengths can be cultivated, but we must find a creative way to be energized by them in order for them truly to be considered strengths. The strength of moderation is a great way to combat one of the most prominent challenges to lasting healthy lifestyle change: dichotomous thinking. This is the on the program, off the program, all or none way of thinking. Usually, this is associated with a high level of motivation and resolve in the beginning, and then as soon as the first obstacles arise, the whole thing is over. You quit. There's no room for gray in this type of thinking. Scaling back or reevaluating is not even an option. There's no middle ground at all. People who yo-yo diet know this frustration of dichotomous thinking well. Practicing mindful balance and moderation will help you find the middle path, which is the only path, really, that can maintain optimal health over the long run. Highs and lows will happen, so don't think about balance and moderation as a place to get. Rather, they're a place to keep moving toward. It's unrealistic to think that every action you take will be moderate. So it's a constant game of correcting your course and getting back on the path as soon as you've fallen off. If balance and moderation is represented by the straight line on this picture, your life will be more like the wave. The goal is to hug the line as close as you can, not to be a flatliner. Willpower is another huge asset to optimal health and can be defined as self-discipline, self-control, and self-management. Having this ability to, say, again, self-regulate means a person can take control of thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. They don't give in to temptation at the slightest whim and can control short-term desires and impulses which could jeopardize long-term goals. A person with the strength of prudence and willpower tends to be future-oriented and remembers the vision of their best self during times of temptation. They have the insight to know they'll regret impulsive choices later, and they exercise their will to sacrifice short-term pleasure in the moment for long-term fulfillment and success in the future. In other words, when the voice of your best self is louder than the voice of your saboteur, you've got willpower. According to Ray Baumeister, the leading research on the topic of willpower, this ability to delay gratification is the second best predictor of success in America, only to IQ. Some of the first research on willpower took place in the 60s and was known as the marshmallow experiment. Researchers worked with hundreds of 4-year-old kids who were told that if they could sit in a room with a marshmallow in front of them for 15 minutes, they could have 2 at the end of the time. 2 out of 3 kids ate the marshmallow, and this was reproduced cross-culturally. It's not really any big shock. They're 4-year-olds after all. The interesting thing is that 15 years later in the follow-up study, the kids are now 18 and 19, 100% of the kids who didn't eat the marshmallow were defined as successful, from their high SAT scores, good grades, college they're getting into, jobs, friends, teacher reports, etc. This group was also found to far outperform the average in a 40-year follow-up in the year 2000. So how much willpower do you have? Most report not much, or, well, if I had it, I wouldn't be here. The good news is, out of all the strengths, willpower has probably been researched the most, and the evidence shows that like a muscle, it can definitely be strengthened. The other news is that also like a muscle, unfortunately, it can be fatigued. There's one central storage for willpower, and it gets depleted as it's used throughout the day. This is one reason that it's easy to stick to a program all day and then break down at nighttime. By the time you get home from work, you don't have enough left to make the healthy choices for dinner or to resist the cravings that come up for a late night snack. Each of the following activities depletes your willpower. Pay attention here. Resisting food or drink. Suppressing emotional responses. Restraining aggressive or sexual impulses. Making lots of decisions. Taking exams. Trying to impress someone. Stressed or tired from exertion or lack of sleep. And low blood glucose all deplete willpower. So we're going to focus on this quite a bit this week in the journal and in the coaching, but here are a few suggestions to start that'll help you to forge an iron will. First of all, don't surround yourself with temptations. Out of sight, out of mind. If there are not cookies in your cupboard, you won't have to exhaust your precious will restraining to not eat them. Avoid scheduling several activities that tax willpower the same day. Many of the goals strategies we've already covered have been shown to increase your will. You want to prioritize and track your goals. Start with small goals and build your will. Don't overestimate your will, and acknowledge the potential obstacles and plan ahead. You recognize these from a few sections ago. But most importantly, set reminders of your future best self, whatever it takes. Create a phrase to say to yourself during times of temptation, journal, get creative. But remember your best self. All right, that wraps up our topic of the week. I hope you're feeling strong and ready to commit to the practice of the week and be diligent in your journal topics. As always, if you have any questions about the coaching or about the topic, feel free to email me. Till next time.